And this is Theory of Limits, Part 8. We continue. In verse 177 of Surat Baqara, we hear about 6 types of people who are recipients of charity money. 1. The al-qurba, friends and acquaintances who are not blood related, because blood relatives will be al-qurba. 2. Al-yatama, orphans. 3. Al-masakin, handicapped people, those whose body function are paralyzed or still sakana, still. 4. al-sabil, people on a journey who are stranded because of mishaps such as robbery or a car accident. 5. Al-sa'ilina, people in need of a result of natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, famines, or hurricanes. 6. Firraqab, those as defined earlier who are in debt without a chance to pay off their debt. If we read the verse farther down, we see that regular alms-tax, zakah, is mentioned separately, and we know why, because this is a special tax of the Muslim believers and an exclusive pillar of iman. Charity money, as mentioned first in the verse, is however part of Islam and given to people in need, needless of their religious affiliation. Verse 60 of Surah Tawbah even mentions 8 types of recipients. 1. Al-fuqara, the poor. 2. Al-masakin, the handicapped. 3. Al-amilin alayha, those who administer the zakah tax. 4. Al-mu'allafa qulubuhum, people whose work has a positive impact on public life. 5. Firraqab, the financially enslaved. 6. Al-gharimun, people in debt and imprisonment because of their insolvency. 7. Fi sabilillah, donations in God's way to sponsor the foundations of universities, schools, hospitals. And 8. Ibn al-sabil, travelers in need of assistance. These 8 types of recipients are entitled to charity from within iman. That is, they are the recipients of zakah, the lowest type or minimum amount of sadaqah. 3 types of recipients are mentioned in both surahs. A. Travelers in need of help. B. The handicapped. And C. The financially enslaved, implying that these people are entitled to charity regardless of their religious affiliation. In contrast, 3 types in the first surahs are not mentioned in the second surah and will therefore not receive money through zakat iman. A. The orphans. B. Acquaintances. And C. People in need because of natural catastrophes. That leaves us with 5 types of recipients who receive alms by virtue of their religious affiliation to Muhammad and iman. A. The poor. B. The zakah administrators. C. People who improved public life. D. People imprisoned because of their debts. And E. Those who sponsor institutions of public health and education. 3. Loans. Zakah and sadaqat are for those who cannot repay their debts. We cannot expect any return for what we donate to them. Others, however, can repay their debts without having accrued interest. They would receive an interest-free loan which defies a financial transaction being at point zero. If you do it not, take notice of war from God and his apostle, but if you turn back, you shall have your capital sum, ru'us amwalikum. Deal not unjustly, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly. Surat Baqara, verse 279. If people are wealthy enough to repay the borrowed money with interest, in example, people working in industry, agriculture, and financial and service sectors, and in such, in short, the great majority of society, one should not, as verse 130 of Surat Al-Imran demands, ask for more than 100% interest of the original loan, that is, at maximum twice the borrowed sum, regardless of how long it takes to repay the debts. The verse says, O you who believe, devour not usually doubled and multiplied, but fear God that you may really prosper. Surat Al-Imran, verse 130. Finally, why does verse 275 contain the following clause? But God has permitted trade and forbidden usury. Surat Baqarah 275. The answer is given in verse 276 that immediately follows. God will deprive usury of all blessing, but will give increase for deeds of charity. For he loves not creatures ungrateful and wicked. Baqarah 276. We understand that Surah 2 verse 276 prohibits the payment of interest on money given in charity, but allows recipients of charity to earn income through trade. In Surah 2 verse 275, Allah thus permitted trade for recipients of charity, but forbade charging interest on the money they received through charity. In other words, while profit through trade is allowed, profit through charity is forbidden. It must not be understood, as can frequently be heard, that through Surah 2 verse 275, Allah has allowed all types of trade while forbidding all types of usury. Such an unqualified statement would imply that before Allah's revelation concerning trade and interest, all trades were forbidden and all types of interest were allowed, which would, of course, be historically untrue and economically absurd. Instead, Allah wanted to clarify the position of the recipients of charity. If He had not allowed people to trade with profit, we would be in a grotesque situation in which every businessman ought to check whether his trade partners are entitled to charity or not. If so, the partnership would have to cease immediately. In order to avoid such chaotic and counterproductive trade arrangement and to separate trade from charity, verse 275 of Surah 2 was revealed. This had a huge impact on society, since it allowed welfare organizations, hospitals, charity banks, mental institutions, old people's home, and such to receive charity money regardless of their commercial and financial activities. If we look at the existing financial arrangement in most countries of the world, we see how it corresponds best to the human disposition, al-fitra. We conclude by discussing the main difference between our proposed theory of limits and conventional fiqh jurisprudence. 1. We do not treat the legal verses of the book as codified law, but as signposts or ethical legal markers that Allah asks human beings not to overstep. Traditional fiqh jurisprudence has regarded the legal verses as absolute law, which allowed neither mitigation nor adaptation to changing social and cultural circumstances. Our theory of limits aims to regain the flexibility and elasticity in human legislation that was originally built in the divine text, but which was removed by an overly rigid system of fiqh jurisprudence. We re-emphasize the high degree of universality. Thank you for following Theories of Limit Part 8. Part 9 is next. Let us hear your thoughts.